Forrest.
I could have just come down here by myself 20 minutes ago.
We all good? Forrest, I'm really happy you put on the nice white t-shirt today for the induction.
Did you see me and Dana? We went salt and pepper. He wore the black V-neck, I wore the white V-neck. I told you I'm gonna fit in great around the UFC.
Very nice.
What's Dana gonna wear?
All kidding aside, though, you know, everybody talks about the fight that defined.
I wasn't kidding.
Defined the league. So how good does it feel now to be here and have this induction and to have your moment in the sun again?
No, it's very cool. You know, it's the whole expo for me has been, you know, they can be a grind, but this is the last grind I'll ever do. So enjoy it. You know, it's hard to make the most of things when you're in them. You know, you forget how fun fighting is or why you got into it because it becomes a job. You know.
So does that mean then you now have had the time to look back, now that you've retired, look back, look at some of your fights, relive the moments and think, hey, you know what, that was pretty great?
Well, yeah, you know, just enough to be sad I can't do it anymore. Yeah. But that's the nature of it. You can never truly appreciate something until it's gone.
How surreal was that moment on stage there, Forrest? Was there a finality to your career?
No, not yet. I think it had already hit me a little before, so no, I was just, you know. Cool thing. I had actually a lot of friends and family made the trip. So
there's been a bit of talk on the internet about a possible comeback. Is there what are the realistic chances of that?
I mean, unless my shoulder just goes back together, it's zero. I mean, I was thinking about seriously going to Germany and get some stem cell in my shoulder, but I mean, I haven't had power in my right hand since 2007, and now I can't like even guillotine or footlock with it. So it's probably time to not fight anymore.
So there isn't a single fight that would sort of give you that final itch to
there's a lot of them, but there's not. I mean, there's no tools to make that fight happen with. You know, I mean, the last thing I want to do is pick a good fight and then get beat up. If you can't make it through a training camp, you probably can't make it through a fight.
You talked about retirement for a little while. I know it was something that was on your mind. So what was it, though? Was it really the shoulder finally?
Actually, I didn't talk about retirement. Everybody's asking me because I was fighting Tito, who was retiring. And so I was like, no, I'm not retiring at all. Because I had no intention of doing it. Even if you think I was already semi-retired, I fight like twice a year, which is great, you know? That's like, really, I only spent like 20 to 30 weeks worrying about fighting. You know, so I was, fighting twice a year was great.
Yeah. But what was it that finally, flipped the switch, though, and finally made you say, you know what, I can't keep going?
No, I was already babying my shoulder when I was getting ready for Phil Davis, and then, blew the knee out, like the, year recovery type injury, and I was like, all right, no knee, no shoulder, it's time.
Was it a conversation that you had with Dana, or did you go to him and tell him, listen, I'm done?
No, I just texted him about a week after I saw the Vanderlei-Bryan Stan fight.
What did the text say?
I'm done. I think he did actually. By the way, I'm quit.
You're the second generation of the super fighters. This feels like the end of an era. Are you ready to sit back and watch the first new athletes in not only the UFC, but the first guys who actually picked MMA as a first option sport?
Yeah, well, I was having that conversation the other day, and what's the best, martial art, and, something we were talking about, I believe, yesterday on stage was these kids today, they don't even know what they're wrestling, they're boxing, they're doing it all together seamlessly, and so I think there is, there's still an evolution, and you think basketball, football, we're still new in the sport. I mean, this is still maybe like the 70s for basketball, Remember like in the 50s, and then they made dunking illegal and hook shot was developed. Shit like that's still happening. This is a newer sport, And the other thing is, I had an old boxing coach, Doc, used to say the talent goes where the money is. And the heavyweights were always slim. And, the lightweights, that's going to be a stacked class. They just created it. Those guys have no other sport to compete in. Those guys grew up wrestling, boxing, doing weight class sports, because they were smaller. They didn't grow up playing football and basketball. Guys that played football and basketball now might say, hey, I like fighting. You can make just as much money fighting.
Forrest, why do you think that fight, what was it about that fight that still just resonates today?
It was a great collusion of circumstances, It was, everything kind of hit at the right moment for us. It was the right time of the night, the finale, the live show. the deal, the whole show was still kind of in question. And it was that straw. They kind of pushed it over and said, oh, okay, now this is something that needs to, continue, or we should do another season of this. So being at the right place at the right time. I've always had a lot of luck in my career, and everybody will tell you that. But what they don't realize is I've also had a lot of bad luck. I've just had a lot of luck.
Forrest, I want to talk about the job you're doing with the UFC. When you were retired, and Dana talked about that, I was at that event, and he said you're going to be doing outreach and how you were perfectly suited for that. Can you comment on what you'll be doing with the UFC and what that means to you?
Well, thus far, we've I got to sit on a couple meetings with charities that the UFC is thinking about working with. And the coolest thing as far as Zappos donated some shoes, and the UFC put together a venue, a time, a place, just the kind of logistical stuff of giving the shoes to kids from a girls and boys town, and that's something that, as I kind of ease into it, I'd like to play more and more of a role in, and, actually be the guy with the clipboard saying, okay, this guy's got to be here at this time, this guy's got to, it's a very cool thing. And we were down at the Gay and Lesbian Center downtown, everybody's coming up and thanking me, and I'm like, yeah, I actually didn't do anything, but you're welcome nonetheless. I'll pass that on to Lorenzo and Dana that you guys, your thank you. But yeah, so you get to, it's kind of like I said about law enforcement. You get to do good deeds, and that's your job. You get paid for it. So.
How's the writing going? Are you going to keep doing that?
I don't know.
You're so good. You've got to keep doing it.
I told you the story, I think.
Yeah, you do it on phones, right?
Well, I had my phone, and I don't back phones up because, I'd be like using a condom. That's for pussies. No, I'm kidding. I don't listen to that. So anyway.
You can get fined now. Remember, you said that you're an employee now. Exactly.
I now work for the UFC, so I'm no longer an independent contractor, yeah. But so I threw my phone. I was trying to give my mom directions. Right off the bat, like while she's driving, illegally talking on her phone. So I just got so frustrated, I threw my phone down and it broke, and they weren't able to retrieve any of that book. Yeah, that was like a year ago. So I'm still, I take notes now, and now I do the iCloud thing.
That's good.
So next time I have extreme road rage, I had secondary road rage. Sympathetic road rage.
Well, I had another idea too, because Steven Seagal, I don't know if he's making Lawman anymore.
Right.
With your background in law enforcement and your fighting style, I think you could do a good series.
I've done law enforcement enough to know it's kind of like a job. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Forrest, when you started and when you got in that fight with Stephan, did you ever think that this many years later you'd be able to make a career not only in the octagon but also just long term out of UFC and fighting?
Well, I'd hoped. Did I think like a week or two after that fight, my life kind of changed. People started noticing me, and people were like, "Oh, that's what you've been doing. That's why you show up." I work with bruises and stuff. And so I hoped that this would be my path.
Forrest, what are you going to miss most about being a fighter?
There's a lot of things I'll miss. The actual fighting, training. I got into this because I really like to work out and train and hit people. I didn't used to mind getting hit. I don't like getting hit so much anymore, but I didn't used to mind it.
Are you going to stay in shape now?
Oh yeah, no.
You're not going to end up being a heavy guy walking around.
I don't think so. This is me, and I still can't. I'm in decent shape now, and I still can't work out 100% because of my knee. But no, I enjoy working out. I enjoy, I'll still roll 2 or 3 times a week, just with the old people.
What did you think when you found out that Stephan had named his baby Griffin?
I was, I was almost a little worried for Griffin that might be a lot to live up to. I was like, oh, it's kind of. But then again, Stephan is a big Family Guy fan, so what are you going to do?
There was a little controversy about Stephan going to the Hall of Fame with you, but I don't think anybody asked your opinion. What do you think of this and the link that will always ban you?
Oh, no. Well, I kind of spoke to that on the video. We are linked, and it was a great moment, and I was fortunate enough to come up on the winning end of it. But, you think about things you think about the subjectivity of a Hall of Fame, just being in that fight was pretty amazing for us. And we both went on to fight a lot of people and have good careers, I would have liked more. I'm sure he would have liked more too, but, you know, we were again at the right place at the right time. Do it.
You've been in the game for a long time.
I'm very happy he's in there with me. I'm very happy. He's a good guy.
You've been in the game for a long time, and you sort of grew up a bit as a fighter with the UFC. What's it been like to sort of see the progression of both the sport and the UFC and grow up alongside it?
That's a deep and introspective question that would require thoughts on my part. I mean, it's grown. The best summation of the whole thing I can say is when I saw fighting in 2000, I'm still a basketball and football fan, and I watched the playoffs in basketball and football every year, but I saw fighting, and those things just paled in comparison for me. And I thought, man, fighting, that's where it's at, you know. And I've said this 1,000 times, but if you think about it, it's the primal, you know, form of competition, you know. Just instead of, you know, every time somebody fouls somebody hard, they fight or they play fight or something, you know. I was like, why not just skip the, you know, the balls and the foreplay of the whole sport and get straight to the fight, you know. Kind of like why people watch hockey, you know. So and I was just amazed. I was like literally that guy running around. Don't you guys see this? Don't you guys look at this? This is amazing. And it's not always amazing, but to me, you know, the fights that aren't great, that just it's you know, an odd stylistic matchup, whatever. You know, you can't have ice cream all the time, you know. It's only, you know, there should be some, you know, a great fight, like, you know, for me it was that Stan Silva fight. You know, those don't come along every day, you know, so I appreciate them.
Do you have a feeling as to what was more momentous, winning the title or winning that fight with Stephan and getting the job basically in the UFC?
Probably the first fight, yeah. Just like I said, I went from, you know, living on an air mattress in Georgia to living on a couch in Vegas, which was big time. No, seriously, I did. I went and bought like a $200 mattress, and I slept, just a mattress, and I slept on the floor under the dining room table in a fort like a child.
If you were to tell somebody starting out now in MMA, they're, you know, just getting into it, what would you tell them? You obviously have a lot of perspective now.
As like tell them, you know, just take care of your body. You know, take care of your body. Choose your training partners wisely. Decide ahead of time what the workout you're going to do. Don't adjust your workout based on how you feel that day. You know, or if somebody's going hard and you plan on going hard Thursday and it's Wednesday, you say no. I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna say, you know, set, you know, structure your workouts, periodization, shit like that. Complicated stuff. It sounds stupid. Doesn't make for good quotes in an interview situation.
Hey, Forrest, can I just, because he's fighting tonight, get your thoughts on Anderson Silva and being one of the greatest of all time?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, so far I think he is the greatest I've ever seen of all time, ever. You know, I mean, there's some guys that, you know, that rival him as far as, you know, being, like, you know, obviously like Hoist and Hicks and guys that were just so far ahead of everybody else that, it, you know, at the time it almost wasn't fair, but you know, I enjoy Anderson. You know, as far as the fight tonight, I do think Weidman has a chance because of his skill set, wrestling and grappling, jiu-jitsu, etc. He's got, you know, the wrestling and the submission game. But, and I've said this a bunch too, I hope that Anderson knocks him out in spectacular fashion. Thusly, I can take up less space on the highlight reel.
Exactly. And you actually did say something yesterday at the party that when you faced off against Anderson, you were like, yeah. Talk about that.
I had a moment of not clarity where I actually was like facing off against him in the weigh-ins, and I thought, oh, I can do this. I can beat this guy. Yeah. Like I felt like if you watch the stare down, I feel like I won the stare down. Yeah. And unfortunately, that was the last winning I ever did when it came to him.
Would you want to see him in a super fight, or would you want to see super fights in the UFC?
And this is just, again, I work for the UFC now, so my opinions are, maybe I should pay attention to what I say, but I'm almost afraid that Anderson would lose to Jones. Just personally, I don't want to see him lose. Does that make any sense? Like, I think Jones would be, when I saw Jones take Chael down at will, Chael's a decent wrestler, I thought to myself, that's the difference, you know? Jones will be able to take Anderson down. He's got the length, he's got the speed, he'll be able to get to him and take him down. That doesn't mean, you know, and he'll have a good game plan. It comes from a good camp. And that's just, you know, third-hand speculation.
Forrest, you're a pretty funny guy. Have you ever given any consideration to acting, comedy, stand-up?
Right. You know, I have. And I really, again, I'm going to say something wildly inappropriate. It's just like porn. I like being a really good amateur as opposed to being a really bad pro. Alright? So it's kind of funny though. Yeah? It's like, it's much better to be a really good guy. See, you know, guys don't really expect fighters to be funny. So when I am funny, it's like a win-win. But if I was a comedian, you'd be like, hey, he's not that great of a comedian. Just like that.
Do you ever get tired of the Bonnar match being brought up over and over again, and it's sort of defining you as a fighter?
Does Mark Hamill hate Star Wars? Boom. I don't know. You'd have to ask I don't.
It ruined his career.
I don't. It did, but you know, it kind of still pays my bills. I got a job now because of that fight. You know, so you know, it's hard to hate the girl that made you type thing. You know, it's yeah. Did I wish sometimes to kind of break that link? Yeah, but you know, again, you know what helps is that I like Stephan. If I didn't like the guy, it would actually really suck. If it was like we were like bitterly divided over who won and it was a contentious atmosphere, it would suck. But I like Stephan and we've always gotten along, so it's just very cool, you know.
You know, a lot of people say when they're fighting, oh, I wish I had more time for my family. Now you got more time for your family. How's it going with the baby? And
man, I wish I could still fight now.
Exactly.
Boom, that's a divorce line.
You gonna encourage your kids to fight for us?
I'll encourage them to work out and do something, you know, grappling and jiu-jitsu related. Then again, I won't let them cut weight, you know. I've got a whole plan on it. And again, my plan is to expose my daughter to everything. You know, I'll expose her to it, and if she is passionate about it. That's one of the memories I had. I grew up, you know, for my formative years, I didn't have a dad when I was starting sports, and I saw these kids, because I would always like carpool with kids that had dads, and the dads were always pushing them. And then I was like, man, I wish I had a dad to push me, you know? These kids are so lucky. And then I realized that that's what burns you out, you know? These kids hate this. I'm doing it because I love it, and nobody's encouraging me to do it, really. My mom doesn't even want me to play football. You know, she's like, don't do that, play soccer, it's safer. That was before they knew hitting the ball would make you brain dead. But, yeah.
Last question, guys.
Last question. Make it good, guys, please. Good one.
This is your final event as a quote-unquote fighter, going to the Expo, going to the Hall of Fame. So tomorrow morning you're going to wake up officially as a UFC employee.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Well, I was just actually thinking of logistics that it's going to be hard to do his job and walk fighters from one place to another. Because people will be like, hey, Forrest, do that. I was like, no, man. I just, you know, it was kind of like, oh, sorry, I keep doing that. I'm going to blame it on you. But you know, it was kind of like I was so, you know, curt at the press conference because I don't like being in the way. I don't like detracting from guys. When they had just fought, you know, that want to be with their families, have been training, etc. I didn't want to take up their time, you know. It felt like this wasn't my moment. It's these guys' moment. They just fought. I should get out of the way. So that, you know, it's kind of tough to kind of get out of the way and let guys, you know, shine and just be like, you know, I don't want to be walking a fight around and be like, hey, Forrest. I'm like, yeah, this is the guy that's actually fighting now. Shut up.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for
you guys
everything
very much.
Thank you.
over the years.